Let's go and move with life. Let it go. Something new tonight. Let's go and move with life. Let it go. Something new tonight.
G'day guys, welcome to the Unofficial Scorecard Podcast, a podcast where we talk all things boxing and occasionally the wider world of combat sports. This is episode 72, and on today's episode, guys, I am joined by a long-time US boxing media member. You would know him from multiple podcasts, Ring Theory, the HBO Boxing Podcast, the Showtime Boxing Podcast, and most recently, the Interim Champion Boxing Podcast. He's a current writer for BoxingScene.com and a returning mate of the show. It's Eric Raskin. Guys, this was an absolute ton of fun. Not only did Eric and I get into all things current North American boxing, we also just had a really fun time, or at least I did. Eric is such a nice bloke, really fun to chat to, super knowledgeable. Yeah, it's kind of like a dream guest for me, guys. I always enjoy myself on these pods, and today was absolutely no exception. What did we get to? Well, we had to talk about Keyshawn Davis's potential star-making world title win just from a couple of days ago over the Dennis Baranchik for the WBO Lightweight Title. We also jumped into the implications of Top Rank's deal with ESPN possibly coming to an end, and Eric actually suggested a possible pivot and a different broadcast partner for ESPN that I had absolutely no idea about, but it sounds pretty cool. We turned our minds back a couple of weeks ago, guys, and had a chat about the David Benavidez, David Morrell fight and the return of the big US boxing pay-per-view. We also had to address the Canelo Turki media circus, I guess is all you could call it. It was really interesting to get Eric's take, being a long-time media member, on just what his opinion was of what could only be described from, at least from me looking from the outside in, just a total disaster. So Eric gave us his thoughts on that, and we also, for the second time ever on the pod, got to play a round of the fight game. Now, Eric explains the rules to the fight game and how it came about during the chat, but it's a boxing trivia game that Eric and Kieran Mulvaney invented when they were doing the Showtime Championship Boxing Podcast, and for the second time I had a crack at making up some questions and giving it to Eric, and once again Eric impressed because he is a total professional, so that should come to the surprise of no one. Of course, coming up this weekend we had to have a chat about the Beterbiev versus Bivol 2 mega card. Tons of fights, too many to list right now. We get an update from Eric on his writing plans for the future and if there could be a possible return to podcasting. And of course, I had to talk some Survivor at the end, but guys, this was an awesome, wide-ranging chat. Eric's one of my favourite guys to talk to. He's such a nice bloke, a really intelligent boxing contributor and analyst. I really think you guys are going to enjoy this one, so let's jump to that now. All right, well, the time has come to check in again with long-time US boxing media member, one of the original boxing podcasters, along with his mate Kieran Mulvaney, co-inventor of the fight game, current writer at Boxing Scene, Survivor fan, and returning mate of the show, Eric Raskin. Eric, I'm pumped to chat, mate. Thanks for coming back on.
Yeah, my pleasure, Zach. And original podcaster, I go back to 5 years before Kieran and I even had a podcast. I had Ring Theory with Bill Detlefs. I've been podcasting since 2009, which makes me feel kind of ancient, but here we are.
No, that's why I said one of the original. I was aware of Ring Theory, but it was a little bit before my technological advancement into even knowing what a podcast was. So, but I've been reminded by the real ones many times that I'm a Johnny come lately on the podcast thing. But no, we'll Eric, there's probably no better place to start, mate. We've just had, if we're to believe the boxing media cycle for the last week, the coronation of a new US superstar. Keyshawn Davis won his first world title with a 4th round stoppage over Dennis Baranchik just a couple of days ago. There's a whole ton of ways we can sort of get into this one, Eric, but I guess the first way to start is, what were your thoughts?
So it's interesting that you point out the next U.S. superstar sort of chat, or the coronation of him. I think tool-wise, talent-wise, he could be that guy. And I felt that way for a while, and there was a brief sort of we got thrown off the scent by his lousy performance in that one fight that went the distance, and then it ended up turned into a no contest because of the marijuana test and all that. And I think we that sort of made everyone back down on their excitement over Keyshawn Davis. And the excitement that I had going into that prior to that one it's been proven that we were on the right track before that fight seems the outlier, and this guy is the goods. He has all the talent you could ask for, but of course it takes more than that to crown a superstar in American boxing. He hasn't proven that he's a ticket seller outside his home base. There's still a long way to go, but certainly the performance against Branchik exceeded my expectations. I went into that expecting he's going to win. He's a big favorite. He's too good for this guy, too quick, too slick, too skilled. But it's probably going to go the distance, be that kind of fight. And instead, four round KO. I didn't particularly see coming. The body shot knockout, just beautiful stuff. And I wonder how much he was motivated by the box that he received in the mail a couple days beforehand. That some really deeply racist stuff going on, and we don't know who it came from. But I wonder if that made the difference in this being a knockout versus a distance fight that it might have been if the heat hadn't been turned up.
Yeah, and you did mention that there was probably the main thing that was going on that week with the unsanctioned delivery that was made. Yes. Disgustingly, but on air, we in Australia we actually got the main ESPN broadcast, which we normally don't get. So we got the Joe Tessitore, Tim Bradley commentary. I'm just going from memory, so I don't want to put words in anyone's mouth, but I believe Tessitore very strongly sort of intimated that the package did come from Branchik's team. Was that actually confirmed, or is that just sort of one hell of an assumption made by Joe on air?
I think that was everyone's initial assumption, and as far as I know, it was never confirmed. I know there were some fingers pointed toward it somehow being Teofimo Lopez that was associated with it somehow, even though he was not directly involved in this fight. And I guess I wouldn't put that past him. I don't think we know. Certainly the Branchik team did not step up and accept responsibility for it. I think whoever it came from, it did provide some motivation for Dave. I mean, he spoke about, I want to knock this guy out in one round. It's funny. As you know, I do a bit of wagering, very, very low stakes. And I had a couple of free bets to use, which, you win some promo and you end up with $5 that you have to bet on something. And it makes sense to do it on longer odds, yada, yada. I had a big one that I put on the parlay of Keyshawn Davis by decision and Jack Catterall by decision. So it's kind of good that either individual leg lost there, so I don't feel bad because they both lost, so I was never even close on that one. But I had a smaller one after I'd made that bet. I had a smaller one, and this was after the package was sent. I went ahead and put one on Davis by KO in the first 6 rounds at like plus 650. Thinking, I'm not going to win both of my bets, but if the other one doesn't hit, maybe he is going to knock this guy out quickly because he's just that motivated and that hungry to do it. And so at least I won one of my free bets for a couple slices of pizza.
Congratulations. You're well and truly up in the long-term betting game over me. So much so I've retired early. I can't do it
good.
anymore.
That's a smart move. You can't lose what you don't bet.
Yeah, that's what my old man told me. So I finally took his advice. But I thought going in, I was actually pretty bullish on Keyshawn. I was thinking the first 4 rounds in particular would be really cagey. I thought it was going to take Keyshawn a fair bit of time to really kind of figure out what's going on, not overcommit. But once he sort of got his timing down and figured out that range and figured out the weird sort of side-to-side herky-jerky movement of Branchik, he'd sort of lock in pretty quickly. I thought going in to be about a 6-round stoppage. So I was certainly surprised at how fast Keyshawn found it. Basically, nothing happened in the first round. The second was similar, but by round 3, Keyshawn was really finding. And when he found that distance, and one of the other things that really impressed me about Keyshawn is how teachable he is for such a high level amateur. Like, he's really adapted well to the pros relatively quickly. Like when Baranchik, it was clear in the first 2 rounds, Baranchik wanted to sort of come in with a couple of shots and clinch. Keyshawn's a big guy who's long, so you don't sort of want to hang out in that mid distance with him. But, and to me, it was so clear they prepared for this. Keyshawn would sort of frame out with the arm, but not the elbow or the glove, but just get that arm frame straight across the chest, maintain distance, put the hip inside, and he had that right hand free to sort of land uppercuts and body shots, which was really clever. Like, you can't do that in the amateurs. So he had to have learnt that relatively recently, and he was able to execute it in the biggest fight of his life at 25 years old. I mean, yeah, I wasn't sure where he sort of sat in terms of, superstar potential, like we were sort of reading from the promotion and all the media throughout that week. But yeah, after executing sort of when the lights are the brightest, it's hard to argue against it, to be honest.
Yeah, and I wonder if he may turn out to be what we all were expecting Shakur Stevenson to be as the next big American star in this weight range, the eventual super fight with Gervonta Davis opponent. That's the where people have projected Shakur Stevenson to head for several years now, and obviously Shakur has the talent to get there, but not the fan friendly style for the most part. Not picking up a following outside of his local North Jersey area. I wonder if Keyshawn Davis maybe is the sort of newer, younger model that has a more fan friendly style, and as you talked about, that adaptability that just when you start to think, yeah, maybe he's a boxer first, and is not going to deliver the thrills. These last few fights, he's really stepped up and shown that he can punch and go to the body and has the power and is on this nice knockout streak. Well, I guess it's only 2 in a row by knockout, but 3 out of the last 4 since that fight that was turned into a no contest. I'm glancing at his record now on BoxRec. The Pedraza fight, he was washed and we all knew it, and that one didn't prove much. But then these last 2 to come out and blow out Lemos, who didn't even try to make weight, and then to dominate Baranchik like he did, it does feel like he's reaching this next level and is ready to tangle with pretty much anyone in the division. I guess I would just recommend to his team, think about a new nickname, because the businessman is the most incredibly boring nickname possible. You want to promote this guy as a superstar. You can't have Tank Davis versus the businessman Davis. That doesn't work. So come up with a new nickname, and I think he's ready for the super fights.
Well, it's sort of terms of abstract comedy. I don't mind it, to be totally honest. It's kind of weird enough to be funny for
as a nickname that's so bad it's good. If you want to go that route, sure. I guess I can see that.
That's where I'm coming from. But we spoke about saying, Eric, that Keyshawn's ready for pretty much anyone in the division. If you could sort of play fantasy matchmaker with him, what path would you sort of map out for the rest of the year for Keyshawn?
So, I mean, he's in this incredibly deep division. First of all, lightweight is maybe the best division in the sport right now. So there's a few options. I guess it depends, how quickly do they want to leap? And of course, that's fantasy matchmaking will ignore whatever politics may get in the way of, promotional issues or whatever that, realistically, I don't think a Tank Davis fight is going to be next, even though that may be high on the list of things I want. But if I were handling him, I think maybe you don't jump right into a Tank or a Shakur or that level yet. You keep building toward it. You just beat Baranchik. I'm looking at the TBRB top 10 in the division, and so names jump out like a Frank Martin type. Who's only lost to Tank Davis. We know he's a championship level-ish fighter, and somebody I think we'd all make Keyshawn Davis a solid favorite against right now. But that gives you a little bit of a measuring stick against Tank, depending on how Keyshawn Davis does against him. Too many Davises in this division, have to keep using first names and nicknames to keep them straight. But I think something like that's a parallel move from Baranchik, maybe a half step up would probably be the way that I'd move him right now. You're not in a huge rush with him. It does seem that, people still view Tank Davis and Shakur Stevenson as the big fight to make if you can make it. So it probably makes sense then that Keyshawn would sort of sit back a bit and see how things shake out and keep fighting guys in that legit top 10 level now that he's proven he can easily beat a Baranchik type that he can handle those top 10 guys. Fight a couple more in that range. Raymond Murataya is an interesting battle of unbeatens. I'm not sure if what sort of financial sense that makes, but I think that'd be appealing. You still have William Zepeda out there, even though I think his last fight against Farmer tarnished him a little bit because it was a disputed decision, and I believe they're doing that again. Am I right that the rematch is set? I think on
I
that one.
believe so, yeah.
Yeah, so you're waiting on that, but based on as good as William Zepeda has looked at times, at almost all times except that last fight. I think you favor Keyshawn Davis over him right now for the versatility that he has. So there are a lot of options at lightweight. That's one good thing. If you're a backer of Keyshawn Davis or you're his management team, there's plenty of options and there's no huge rush with him.
Yeah, well, they're all great options. I did not think of any of those, Eric. So my mind's kind of racing a little bit now. I'd be happy with either of those for sure. But straight away, my mind went to Andy Cruz straight after the fight. I'd love to see that fight. Probably, as you mentioned, with the politics, and there's no way Keyshawn's going to, seemingly from the outside in, go and fight a guy who's 5-0 now. Would take all the risk. It's a lose-lose situation for him. But as a fan, knowing their history, I'd love to see that fight now.
Yeah, I think that's one of those ones, to use Bob Barum's favorite term of let it marinate. That's one that, Cruz just isn't there yet as a name in professional boxing. And even Davis is not there yet as a name. His marketability does not yet meet his talent that's been on display. So both of those guys could use some more high profile wins before that fight really makes sense for everyone. But certainly it's a great matchup with the amateur history and all that.
Yeah, well, whatever direction Keyshawn goes, it's going to be must-watch TV, that's for sure. But that takes us to a little bit of a broader topic, Eric. Just for a little bit of background, it came out this week, or a couple of days before the fight, that in Australia, the ESPN platform was going to be available in full schedule, full library, at least the way I understood the press release, on Disney Plus in Australia. As it stands now, we would only get some of the top-ranked cards, depending on if Fox Sports Australia would pay for the rights fees, so we didn't always get the fights. We got this card on the weekend, which was great. But so as soon as I read that, I was like, this is fantastic. We're finally going to get every top rank show. Sensational. And then hours later, I saw a comment or an article that the ESPN deal with Top Rank could potentially be coming to an end. Do you have any sort of information? I'm sure you're in the market in the country that these entities do business in. You certainly know more than I do. Is there any info you can sort of give us on the current relationship with ESPN and Top Rank?
So I only know what I've read. I haven't done any authentic first-hand reporting myself, but it's been my understanding for a while that this deal the deal between Top Rank and ESPN was unlikely to be renewed, but that there was still some hope out there. But it does seem it will end in August, barring some shocking turn against the way things appear to be headed, and that Top Rank is shopping around to try to find a new TV home. The most interesting option to me here in America, I'm not sure, exactly what's available in Australia, but that there's serious talks apparently going on that they may go in the Time Warner direction, which would put fights on over the air on the TNT network, which sports-wise mostly does NBA basketball these days, but also has, it's a 24-hour cable network. But that would also be synced up with HBO/Max, the streaming app version of HBO. And it's just this kind of fascinating thing that somewhat indirectly, even if the HBO name isn't in use anymore exactly, and it's mostly been replaced by Max, that boxing could be back on HBO or a form of HBO with the streaming app, that Max and through Time Warner could get back into the boxing game after what would be now like a 6-year hiatus, roughly. I love that, as we know the quality of production that they can do. Maybe it even brings Jim Lampley back into calling fights. Who knows? I mean, that's a bit of a leap. We still have a few few deals to get done before you can even start thinking about who would be calling the fights. But that's one option that sounds like very seriously those talks are ongoing. And the TNT element is important because right now in the US in boxing, there's really, once ESPN and Top Rank ends, there's no over the air cable network that's showing fights. This Keyshawn Davis card that aired on Friday, I got a text from close friend of mine who is not even a casual boxing fan. He's a big sports fan, but he almost never watches boxing, whatever. He texted me on Friday night as the fights were starting, "Hey, are these fights on ESPN any good? Should I bother watching?" And I was like, "Wow, you must really be bored now that football season is over. You're asking me whether to watch these fights." But that's the kind of thing that can't happen with any other network that currently airs boxing. I will never get a text from a friend, "Hey, should I turn on these fights on DAZN?" Because my friends don't have DAZN if they're not boxing fans already. It's all on streamers. No one's going to stumble across the fights on Amazon Prime so ESPN was an important outlet in the US still in that regard, that you could get a casual fan or just a mainstream sports fan flipping through the dial, so to speak, and finding fights on ESPN and turning them on. So the TNT element of this possible move for Top Rank is important because it would keep fights on regular US broadcast cable. So I would love to see that deal get done, but I'm also hearing that they're talking to DAZN. They'd just be one more promoter who's moved the product to DAZN, which I guess is good if you're already paying for DAZN to get a little more for your money, although probably they'll also hike up the rates the next time they have the chance, since that's what DAZN does.
Got form, don't they?
Right. So those are the things that I'm hearing. I am sure Top Rank will find a TV or streaming outlet to carry their fights. I'm not concerned that they're going to be left in the lurch, but I'm pulling for that TNT Max option. That sounds intriguing to me.
Yeah, well, okay. And yeah, you might even have to get the old HBO pod back if that happens.
Believe me, that was one of the first things. I sent Kieran a message almost immediately. Let's not get too excited. There's a long way to go, but wouldn't this be something? Because our old producer there, who greenlit our show in the first place, is like in charge of HBO's podcast. So we still have our connection there. So now he's moved on up to doing podcasts about all their original series. You see a True Detective podcast or the Curb Your Enthusiasm rewatch podcast or whatever. He's involved in all that sort of stuff. But it was it was the HBO boxing podcast that started it all.
Absolutely. Well, fingers crossed. That could be
Yes.
actually great news. Actually, that's got me pumped. But if we turn our minds back a couple of weeks ago, Eric, we had sort of the return of the big US pay-per-view card that certainly delivered. The main event, David Benavidez beating David Morrell. Cool boy Steph with a sensational performance in the rematch. Who did he fight? Brandon Figueroa,
Right.
a really good all Mexican fight. Angel Fierro and Pitbull Cruz. The first fight of the night was not the greatest one, but it was quite nostalgic for us over here because for a long time, at least for me growing up, Australian fights domestically were not available. You had to have all these subscriptions to, quote unquote cable TV. When I was in high school, I never had any of that. So I missed a ton of fights. But the thing in Australia, we would always get the American pay-per-views that happened at Sunday and at lunchtime. So we'd all go down the pub and watch them. It's kind of like guys my age. It's, that's what we used to do. So it felt like it's been a long time since the whole Saudi thing that we've had a really big Sunday afternoon here in Australia, Saturday night for you guys, a big US card that delivered in spades. And yeah, I absolutely loved it. So what were your thoughts on the main event and the whole show in general, Eric? Was it nostalgic for you guys too, or are we just in our own little boat over here?
Yeah, I don't think any nostalgia kicked in on my end in that regard. It's so funny to talk about the timing of it and what you look forward to in Australia. And we've, as you know, I battle undiagnosed narcolepsy, and so any of these Saturday night cards, especially Friday night cards, are the worst. I hit Friday. I just have nothing in the tank, and so we were talking off air about how the Keyshawn Davis show, I was like in and out of consciousness throughout the whole undercard of that one. So these Saturday night ones are a challenge too. So I actually, and I know we'll be talking about the big February 22nd Saudi card as well, but the timing of that is fantastic for me. A card that starts at like noon on a Saturday and my time, and the main event will roll out I don't know, 6, 7, 8 p.m. on that's like
midnight
perfect for
maybe.
me. Right.
Those cards are
Yeah.
brutally long.
Yeah, that's true. I'm hoping that they keep things moving, that we get some knockouts or whatever. But in general, that sort of timing works well for me, and I guess not so well for you. And the Saturday night timing for me is a cool Sunday afternoon thing for you. All that said, I did enjoy the Benavidez Morrell card. Like you, I actually found the Fulton Figueroa fight somewhat forgettable as well. It was a impressive boxing display from Fulton, but disappointing that Figueroa couldn't get much of anything going. I don't know. He has the kind of style that works really well until it suddenly stops working. That those guys kind of can fall off a cliff suddenly. So I wonder, it could be part that, or it could just be that Fulton boxed so well that Figueroa just was unable to do the things he wanted to do. But in any case, 2 out of 4 fights on a pay-per-view being real thrillers is about all you can ask for. And so yeah, that Cruz Fierro fight was just nonstop action. I think it's the early leader in the clubhouse for fight of the year. I kind of doubt it holds up over the course of the rest of the year, but for now, that's about the best we've seen. And Benavidez Morrell delivered, even if it was maybe a tad more one-sided than you would have liked. Morrell, it was one of those fights that was competitive all the way, but it never felt like Morrell was going to win. Like you could tell about 2 rounds in that Benavidez had a little too much for him, and could go to that next level and was more versatile. So it wasn't one of those fights that had great drama and intrigue, but it was still good action throughout. And Benavidez really cemented himself as the everything that we hoped he would be. As if you want to accuse Canelo of ducking him, this fight was further evidence of why Canelo would be ducking him if he could do this to David Morrell. I think the card overall certainly delivered what you hope to get out of it and established a new. I mean, Benavidez is somewhere on the short list of biggest stars in American boxing now.
Yeah, no, it certainly looked like that from the outside looking in over here too. But how real do you think Benavidez is? Like, we're obviously going to be talking about the Beterbiev Bivol rematch, the 2 guys that have separated themselves, pretty significantly from the rest of the division for quite a while now. Do you feel like Benavidez is right up at that top echelon, or would you like to see a little bit more from him?
No, I mean, I don't see any reason not to go right into a fight with the winner of that rematch if possible. It depends, obviously, what happens in the rematch. If Bivol wins and it's remotely close and competitive, I think they'll do a rubber match, and Benavidez has to sit on ice for just a bit, waiting for that to shake out. But if Beterbiev wins again, or if Bivol so completely dominates him the second time around that there isn't much interest in a third fight, then yeah, Benavidez is clearly the top contender to whoever wins that fight. And I see no reason not to go right into that. He's beaten Morrell, and it wasn't like just a 1-point close shave. He beat him quite clearly, and is I'd say not just a threat to the winner of Beterbiev Bivol. I came away from that Morrell fight feeling like I would actually slightly favor David Benavidez against those guys right now. Maybe I got a little too much of a prisoner of the moment, perhaps. Maybe I need to wait and see how good the winner of Beterbiev Bivol looks. But it does, just based on their first fight and based on how Benavidez looked against Morrell, and the fact that he seems to be improving with each fight, whereas I certainly don't think Artur Beterbiev is getting better at this point. Bivol kind of also, it has, I'd say he's plateaued. He's in his prime, but he's not going to keep getting better. Benavidez still has potential levels he can climb, and so I hesitate to declare Benavidez the favorite over those guys until we've seen what happens in the rematch. But that's sort of where my head's at right now, is that he actually may be the best fighter in the division.
Damn. Well, we can't wait to find out. But
right.
I mentioned at the start, Eric, that you've been a long-time media member. This past week, we just had some crazy reporting going on with the Canelo Alvarez situation involved with Turkey. And you mentioned one of Bob Arum's quotes earlier, and the whole thing kind of reminded me of another one of Bob Arum's quotes. Yesterday I was lying, but today I'm telling the truth. I don't know. As a fan, it kind of just like shot all of Turkey's credibility right out the window for me. But from a media perspective, how do you sort of, I don't know, what's your take on that whole situation? Like, it just seems so messy.
Yeah, it made me really thankful that I've never made my living as a reporter, as a newsbreaker, that never struck me as a fun way to cover the sport, although I recognize that it's necessary, that we need people out there getting the scoops and reporting the news. But I would much rather sit back, wait for other people to report the news, and I get to write and analyze and pontificate and go in more in depth, interview people, write features. That's more my lane than breaking news. But the newsbreakers really came out looking terrible here, and it's not necessarily their fault. I guess it's more, I'd blame it on the reporting culture, of the sense that we need a scoop on every last detail. I think Dan Raphael does a good job of, uh, he's going for scoops. He's trying to break the news, but he tends not to jump the gun with sort of a, this fight is almost done. He actually tries to wait until he has confirmation that a fight is done before he reports on it being done. Much of the media is fighting to be first, which means saying that this is almost done, or this is being finalized, when in fact they don't have confirmation of that. They have one side. That's the other thing, getting multiple sources is to get it from both sides. When you're in a game where you're fighting to be the first to tweet out the information, that means going off one source a lot of times. And when that source is Turki Al-Sheikh just playing with you to further whatever his aims are, and maybe help his negotiations. From what I was reading, I believed that Canelo Paul was close. In retrospect, was it even seriously something Canelo was thinking about, or was it just a negotiating tactic? Was it ever actually close? I don't know. Everyone comes out looking bad. Turki. Look, I wasn't inclined to trust the guy anyway, but now I think this opened up a lot of people's eyes. The Bob Arum quote that you mentioned, if he was willing to say, like, right to a reporter's face, yeah, I lied to you yesterday. I had to. Now I'll tell you the truth, and thank you for being such a good sycophantic soldier. Now you'll get more interviews with me. It's really dirty stuff, frankly, and the fact that the Saudis own a major media arm within boxing, it just makes it hard to know how much to trust and who to trust and when to trust them. You kind of have to turn to some of the more independent journalists who weren't reporting the wrong thing here, and look at them as the more likely sources of news going forward. But yeah, it's just made me very thankful that I am not in the business of trying to be first to report anything.
Yeah, geez, wow, unbelievable. But from one of the true lowlights of boxing to a highlight, the fight game.
All right.
You and your mate Kieran Mulvaney invented the best boxing trivia game. I love it. If anyone's listening or watching that doesn't know, would you mind just explaining how it goes? Because I'm going to have my second attempt at it. I think my first one was better, but we'll see how we go.
Oh, okay. All right. I can't remember what your first one was. I just remember it was an Australian fight, or there was it a Fennec fight? Is that what it ended up being?
Fennec Nelson won. Yeah.
That's okay. Right. So the way
he got in 3, I think he got in 3.
Okay, maybe I was using the context clues of you being Australian and that pointing me in the right direction and reading your mind a bit. But yeah, so the idea is you pick a famous fight from history and you give 5 clues that increasingly reveal more and more about what the fight is. Usually the first clue is very, very vague, and if you happen to get it off the first clue, it's usually a wild stab in the dark. Second clue tells you a little more. Third clue, you're getting closer. And usually the fourth and especially fifth clues are like, if you've ever heard of boxing at all, you'd better be able to get this by the end of the 5th clue. Yeah, that's the game. It's just a sort of a trivia / guessing game. Yeah, bring it on. I haven't played since the Showtime pod ended, or since the last time I played with you. I forget which was more recent, but I've got my pen ready. I'll be jotting down the key elements of the clues here and see how I can do.
All right, we'll see how we go. Hopefully I can redeem myself. But clue number 1. The fight took place for a vacant world title between two non-American fighters fighting for their first world title on the undercard of a heavyweight title fight in the mid-2000s.
Okay. So the last part helps narrow it down. Undercard of a heavyweight title fight in the mid-2000s. So now we're talking about the Klitschko era. I guess there are certain questions about how legitimate the various titles involved here are. Was it like the heavyweight title in the mid-2000s, or was it a belt? This is for a vacant title? Was it for a vacant legit title, or some sort of random WBO interim something or other? So there's a lot of wiggle room there. They're both non-Americans, both fighting for their first title. So that leads me to think they're kind of younger fighters. Trying to think of some of those Vladimir Klitschko cards from the mid-2000s, something like a Klitschko. Oh, okay, all right. I've got a guess. This may not fit all the clues, but I'll just throw it out there so we can get to clue 2. I do recall that Vladimir Klitschko against Sam Peter, their outstanding first fight, which may or may not have been for a title, I can't remember, that underneath that was the outstanding Miguel Cotto, Ricardo Torres war. I don't know if that was for a vacant title. I believe they're both non-American. Let's go with that. Is it by chance Cotto and Torres?
It is not, but that is a great guess.
Okay. All right. It fit most of the categories, if not all of them, perfectly.
And the only reason I didn't pick that one is because I would have been certain Kieran would have done it for sure with his great love of Miguel Cotto. So.
I feel like I gave him a Cotto fight at some point, and it took him surprisingly long to think of it. I feel like I tried to give him a layup once, and he wasn't. The fight game is all about, like, if you get slightly on the wrong track, it's hard to get back on the right track. So, all right. Seems like I made a respectable, if incorrect, guess on the first one.
Oh, absolutely. Okay. All right, clue 2. So the winning fighter would go on to win and challenge for titles in multiple divisions. The loser's career was essentially over after another razor-thin loss in the rematch 18 months later.
It said 18 months later?
Yep, 18.
Okay. All right, so they had a rematch that basically ended the loser's career. The winner went on to, you said he won titles in multiple divisions after this. So I'm trying to think again about some of the heavyweight title fights of the mid-2000s. Like, I can't remember who was on a Shannon Briggs, Sergey Lyakovich undercard, or or was this when Vitaly didn't make his return till 2008, so that wouldn't quite qualify as the mid-2000s, I don't think. But could it have been like Vitaly and Corey Sanders in his last fight before his first retirement? That would have been 2004, I believe.
The first 2 clues are hard. You're bang on. The mid-2000s is mid-2000s. So, just to help you with the era, because would you
be willing? Would you be willing to tell me whether the main event involved a Klitschko?
It does not.
Okay, all right. So that'll help me get to some of these weirder the flotsam and jetsam of the heavyweight division of that era. So who else was there? There was Chris Bird was still hanging around fighting for belts. John Ruiz. It was Lyakovich and Shannon Briggs. Who did Lyakovich win his belt from? I don't know. I'm focusing too much on the main event of the card and not enough on these fighters. The loser, they had a rematch 18 months later. Nothing's coming to mind. I don't think I can throw out a good guess on this one.
All right. Impressive to see you narrow it down, though. You're getting close.
Okay.
So clue 3. The fight took place at the United Center in Chicago, and with the heavyweight title challenger on the same card being from the same country as the winner of this fight, it may as well be in their backyard.
So read the second part of that again. It's at the United Center. What was after that?
With the heavyweight title challenger on the same card being from the same country as the winner of this fight, it may as well have been in their backyard.
Okay. All right. Now I think I know what the main event was. The main event was this when Layman Brewster splattered Galata in one
Yes.
round. Okay.
Yep.
All right. Okay. So Layman Brewster. I wasn't thinking of him, but he did, of course, beat Vladimir Klitschko and lose to Vladimir Klitschko, and his name should have popped into my mind. Okay. So what was on the undercard of that one? A challenger from Poland then. So did you reveal in there whether the Polish fighter was the one who won or lost, or you haven't revealed that anywhere? And you don't have to tell me if you have. I feel like it's
Yeah. The Polish guy won.
Okay, the Polish guy
I had
won.
to reread it again.
Okay, the Polish guy won and then won a rematch 18 months later. So this leads me now to think that it was Tomas Adamek on that undercard.
Spot on.
Okay, all right. So who did Adamek? So it must be. I think they fought twice. Would it be Adamek and Steve Cunningham?
No,
it's Adamek. Somebody else someone that Adamek beat twice. Okay. But I should have thought Australian. What? Can I throw out another guess before you give the fourth clue? So then, did Adamek fight Paul Briggs twice? Is that what I'm thinking of? All right. So we'll call it 3.5.
I'll pay 3 because the first two were hard.
All right.
The first two were hard. So, wow, well done. You were so close to a 2 as well, really.
I guess I was right. I was sort of in the neighborhood during some of those. Those were good clues. They were the perfect sort of like give you a bunch of information that's going to help you narrow it down without totally giving it away. Except once again, I forgot to think about an Australian that might have helped me along a little bit. But honestly, I haven't really thought of the name Paul Briggs in I don't know how long.
Not many people have, unfortunately. It was very much downhill after that. But
I don't even know if I remembered that they fought twice. But was the first fight competitive, close? I can't remember quite what happened.
I think it was a little wider on the cards, but it was certainly a great fight. It's on YouTube.
Okay.
I watched them both recently. The second fight, there was a knockdown and a point deduction, but Adamek still won. But I think Briggs deserved to lose both times. But funnily enough, I thought this might be a bit too obscure, and I was worried about it. I was like, I should think of something else. But I Googled, I just typed in Adamek Briggs Eric Raskin. And there were multiple ESPN articles that you'd written. So I was like, he has written about it. So it might ignite some sort of memory. And so I decided to go with it, double down on the Aussie stuff.
If I wrote about it, I don't remember writing about it, but that's true of most of the things I've written. So I remember you know how memory works is that the things I wrote in my first few years as a boxing writer are much fresher in my mind than the thing I wrote last week. That's just the way it goes.
Nah, fair enough. Well, that was impressive because I thought that was going to be tough. I was having second thoughts, but
no, that was good. That it would have been. Had I just been totally unable to remember the existence of Paul Briggs, there's a risk that unless let me hear your fourth and fifth clues because I wonder if the fifth clue or something would have totally at least spelled out that he has the same name as heavyweight title holder Shannon or something that would have made it impossible.
The fifth clues are really hard. I find them really difficult to think of, and that is already a better one. So, and I did this for hours. But so the fourth clue was, at the time, the Polish winner and the Australian loser had one of the bloodiest willing fights in recent light heavyweight history.
Okay.
And then the fifth clue, which took me so long. With the damage the winner fought through, he could easily have cried Tomas. And if the loser Briggsed a bit more to the table, the result could have been reversed.
Wow, those are some punny reaches, but I would have definitely gotten there at least. There was no risk of me not getting it on 5, even if I'd mostly forgotten Paul Briggs ever was a fighter. So okay, but somehow as I was running through that, his name did come back into my mind, and I'm now remembering a friend of mine who was not a big boxing fan happened to be in Chicago for work or something and went to that card, and I remember texting with him afterwards of how quickly the main event was over. But now as you're talking about it more, I sort of remember him marveling over this great co-feature, great bloody. So it's slowly coming back to my mind.
Yeah, that was impressive. I ran that set of questions past my old man, and he didn't even get it after 5.
So wow.
You dominated him, so
Okay, all right, I'll take it.
you get an easy visa if you want to come over. So, but we've referenced it multiple times now. We've got the massive card coming up this weekend. Eric Artur Beterbiev defending his recently won undisputed light heavyweight title against Dmitry Bivol. It's a massive card. I'd have to get BoxRec up to read it out, which I did get that event. But yeah, it's a huge card. We've got Daniel Dubois and Joseph Parker. Carlos Adames is fighting Hamza Shiraz. Virgil Ortiz is fighting Israel Madrimov in what should be a barn burner. Shakur Stevenson and Floyd Schofield. Joshua Buatsi, Callum Smith, Zayli Zhang, Ajit Kabayel. I've just spammed you with a whole ton of names there, so I apologize, Eric. But what's got you the most fired up, mate? There's a lot of places we could start here.
Yeah, that's the kind of card it is. For whatever issues I may have with the way the Saudis do business, or any of the political elements of all this, there's no denying this is the best and deepest card I think I've ever seen in my time covering boxing.
Wow.
I mean, 7 fights of this quality where there isn't like a single one among the 7 where like, that one's actually kind of trash. They're all either very close and competitive on paper, or in the case of the one fight that there's a very clear favorite, that's Stevenson and Schofield, it's still sort of a fascinating, interesting kind of match that doesn't often get made of a guy as unproven as Schofield taking that leap against one of the best fighters in the world. So there's not a single fight that disinterests me here. If I had to single out the ones I'm most interested in, obviously the main event, Beterbiev and Bivol, was a very good fight the first time, and you're dying to see it a second time. The heavyweight fights are both solid, both good matchups. I think Joe Parker's a pretty live underdog against Dubois. As good as Dubois has looked lately, he has that vulnerability in his past. I think I think I saw Parker at like a plus 235 underdog or something like that, and I'm kind of inclined to bet him at that sort of price. That I wouldn't pick him to win straight up, but as a 2-1 or more underdog, I think he's more live than that. But I guess the undercard fight that most appeals to me is Virgil Ortiz and Israel Madrimov. I think Ortiz is just one of those fighters who is entertaining every time out, has a high ceiling. You also could see him losing at this level to he very nearly lost to his previous fight against Boachuk, just barely got the decision there. That fight I think is fascinating, and I think I saw the odds were like minus 120 and plus 105 or something. Like there's barely a favorite in that fight. So and then the main event is the same way. So yeah, it's just an unbelievably deep card, and I'm as we discussed, it's on daytime here in the Eastern time zone in the U.S. So I've invited over all of my friends who are into boxing writers, a couple of other friends, whatever, and it's like could be a really fun day of and hopefully not even nodding off at any point during the card.
Well, man, that sounds like an awesome day. But just out of interest, who did you have winning in the first Beterbiev Bivol fight?
So I was in what seems the slight minority by going along with the judges and feeling that Beterbiev won. I had it 7-5. I don't think it's possible to have it any wider than that, really. But I did find that I forget exactly how the commentators had it, but I remember them generally leaning toward Bivol and giving him more of those early rounds than I did. I think, if memory serves, maybe I had it 3-3 at the midway point and then gave 4 of the final 6, or maybe I even had Beterbiev down 4-2 but rallying to win 5 of the final 6. I can't remember exactly. I definitely had Beterbiev winning and felt like his pressure was really getting to Bivol more and more as the fight went on, and that even when Bivol was boxing well early, he wasn't necessarily landing the better punches in a lot of those close rounds. But if ever a fight you would have been fine with them calling it a draw, it was that first fight between those two.
Yeah. And what are you expecting to see the second time round?
So I think I don't see Bivol making significant adjustments. We've seen now this is the way he fights against these top guys. He basically fought the same fight against Canelo, and Canelo was a little more passive and submissive and willing to accept his fate after a certain point rather than really charging forward the way Beterbiev did. So I expect the same from Bivol, that he's just going to try to box and keep his distance as much as he can. Uh, and so I make Beterbiev the slight favorite again, as long as he hasn't lost a step. If he can keep putting on pressure the same way that he did in the first fight, we know he's one of those, highly skilled pressure fighters. It's not like a raw attack. But he keeps the pressure on you while using the jab, while going to the body, while closing the distance and having good footwork and all the bringing all those effective elements to it. But I believe he's 40 now, or has he even turned 41? I think he's 40. Who knows at what point he loses that little half a step and is not able to close the distance and get his punches off as quickly. If he's the same Beterbiev he was in the first fight, I would expect him to maybe even win slightly more convincingly this time, that there won't be quite as much of a process of figuring Bivol out, and he'll be able to apply the pressure more from the start. But yeah, if he's slowed down just even the slightest bit, then Bivol's able to maintain the distance more and box the way that he wants to box. And I think it's one of those fights where we'll probably know after about 3 or 4 rounds roughly which way it's going. Even if Bivol has won those early rounds, we'll at least be able to see whether Beterbiev looks like the same pressure fighter that he was the first time, and in which case we can expect him to keep coming on as it goes along. I think those early rounds will be very telling as to whether we're getting something very similar to the first fight or not.
Yeah, wow. Well, it should be an absolute banger. We can't wait for it this coming weekend. I'm sure everyone listening and watching will be tuning in. But just to finish up, Eric, you're currently writing for BoxingScene at the moment, since the Showtime Championship Boxing podcast came to an end. And then you and Kieran also started the Interim Champion Boxing podcast, which had an unbelievable intro song. I loved it. I still play it in my head sometimes, but
yeah, that was a friend of Kieran's put that together for us. I enjoyed that little ditty. Yeah,
that's so cool. Are there any plans? You mentioned with Top Rank potentially going to the HBO streaming service, that the thought sort of popped into your head about an avenue to start the old pod back up there. I'm assuming with Kieran again. Are there any plans or any sort of hopes or anything for the year to get back into the podcasting game a little bit more regularly?
Well, I guess I would definitely categorize it as hopes more than plans. Nothing is planned at this point. I think, and we've been holding out hope from the moment Showtime ended that there may be some sort of PBC Prime option that comes together, but they obviously were not putting the money into shoulder programming that we hoped, but who knows when that may change. So we continue to periodically discuss, whether what options there may be. For the right deal, we would love to get back into to doing our podcast together, but there are no current plans. The writing for BoxingScene has helped in terms of replacing that side income, and I've been enjoying doing that, getting back into writing, which I haven't done with this kind of regularity in a long time, and so it's good to get those muscles going again. But so for now, the plan is continue to write for BoxingScene twice a week. Kieran, you may know, has started a separate podcast with Dr. Margaret Goodman. They're doing it's basically VADA, the unofficial official podcast of VADA, where it's all guests where they focus on medical type of topics. And so I don't quite know if it's weekly. It seems to be a little more sporadic than that. But Kieran is back in the boxing podcast game without me. He's betrayed me. But yeah, the two of us would definitely jump at the opportunity to do it again if the right deal comes along. But in the meantime, get to express myself in my columns on BoxingScene.
Yeah, well, you're doing a great job, Eric. And for everyone listening and watching, I've included your author page on BoxingScene in the description of this episode, so you can click along there and follow along with, as Eric pointed out, his regular writing contributions. But Eric, just one more quick one, mate. I know you're a Survivor fan. Last time we spoke about how we were both kind of, fallen off the wagon a little bit. It's kind of lost its luster. Have you changed? Are you still sort of in the same position? Because I am. I'll put my hand up.
Yeah, all these seasons in the 40s remain fine. I'm not ready to abandon watching, but there hasn't been like a truly great season post-pandemic, in my view. I'm excited for season 50, which we know is going to be a returning player season. We don't know any more about it than that. I'm sure they haven't fully cast it yet, even if they're already thinking about it. So what do we have? We have 48 coming up. Is that the one that's about to start? I think so. I think we have 2 more to get through, or maybe it's 47 coming up. 2 or 3 more to get through before the returning player season. I would say there is a non-zero chance that Survivor 50 could be the last season that I really watch the show. I've that it will have been 25 years of my TV viewing life devoted to it. So I still enjoy it. It's not in its prime. It's not washed, but it's definitely post prime.
Yeah. No, I feel the same as well. But interestingly enough, that they've done for about a decade Australian Survivor.
Right. I've never watched it, but I've heard people speak about it on some of the Survivor podcasts I listen to. How does that stack up?
It's a little bit different. It's like there's 3 episodes a week. It's a 55-day competition, and it's way more like reality driven. But it's still pretty good, but the seasons are hit and miss. But anyway, the only reason I bring that up is they do 1 season a year. This year they're doing 2. So tonight they're actually about to start one, but the one they're doing at the back end of the year is Australia versus the world. So it's 2 tribes of 7, all returning players from the Australian series that have all played multiple times before. Pretty good casting, I will admit. They're all rumors. But then they've got an international team, and there's 3 Americans reportedly coming out. Tony Vlachos.
Oh, okay. All right.
Sari and Parvati.
Okay. Those are... Tony is basically universally regarded as the greatest U.S. Survivor player ever. 3 seasons, 2 of them he won. He's got a very hit or miss style. He can either win the game or he can be one of the first ones voted out. So I'll be curious to see how quickly he's targeted there. But yeah, Sari and Parvati, both legends of the social game. Basically, those are great players. That's interesting. I'm not sure it's quite enough to get me to tune in for Australian Survivor. All these Survivor players have been popping up on other reality shows, Traders, and what's the Deal or No Deal Island and whatever. And I watched 1 episode of Boston Rob on Deal or No Deal Island, But so they're all crossing over into all. Sari has been on everything, it seems. I think Parvati is currently on one of them.
I haven't. This. Okay.
Yeah, I haven't made the leap with them. I guess I'm a Survivor diehard, but not to the point that I'll watch literally anything that a former Survivor player is on. But the three of them going on Australian Survivor sounds pretty interesting.
Well, I bring it up. It could be like a little warm up, get back in the saddle a little bit before Survivor 50. So we'll see what happens.
All right, maybe. But 3 episodes a week sounds like a big commitment, though.
I think this might be a shorter season with just 2 tribes of 7 each. But anyway, we're coming right up on our time, Eric. I apologise, mate. I had to slide the Survivor in at the end. But no, thank you very much for coming back on, mate. It's always a massive pleasure to have a chat to you, and always learn a lot as well. And it's great to see you doing excellent work at Boxing Scene. As I said, everyone can click in the description of this episode onto Eric's author page for Boxing Scene and get all these articles straight up. He does a lot of evergreen stuff too, not just necessarily weekly things. So you can go back and check out those articles at any time. And I'm still holding out a little bit of hope for some sort of podcast revival in the future. But barring that, I might just have to annoy you a little bit more often, Eric.
Annoy me anytime, Zach. I'm happy to come on the show. It's always good chatting with you.
No worries, mate. Well, thank you very much. And until next time, mate. Cheers.
Awesome. Thanks for having me on.
All right, guys. And there we had it. That was my chat with current Boxing Scene writer and returning mate of the show, Eric Raskin. I don't know if you could tell, but I really enjoyed that. That was an absolute heap of fun for me. So, guys, as mentioned in the chat, if you would like to follow along with Eric's work, which I highly recommend, he is currently writing for Boxing Scene, and the link to Eric's author page at the Boxing Scene website is in the description of this episode or underneath the video if you are watching it. Guys, Eric does great work. I think I mentioned on the chat, he does evergreen content as well as not only just the weekly content. So you could go back and read an article that Eric wrote, 6 months ago, and it's still as relevant today as it was back then. So I would highly recommend if you're looking for some more boxing content, especially from a North American source, you'd be hard-pressed to find anyone with better ability to be writing about our favourite sport than Eric Raskin, guys. So I would highly recommend that if you want to follow along with Eric on the social media account Twitter, now X, but who calls it X? We're calling it Twitter. I also have Eric's Twitter handle in the description of this episode or underneath the video. So click along and follow along with Eric directly. Guys, I've had some tough times on this pod, sort of like locking people down. We spoke about it for people that listen or watch regularly, had a big break last year. And a lot of times it's just hard to lock people down. I know I say this a lot. Eric is so easy to deal with. It's amazing. I've had so much of a harder time trying to get people on the pod in Australia, and I haven't got them on the pod because it was just way too hard and I got ghosted or just got told no. Eric is the exact opposite, and all I could say is from my dealings with him, when the red light's on and when the red light's off, he's just an absolute thorough gentleman. He couldn't be more polite. He couldn't be more punctual. He's just an absolute, complete, total professional. So, guys, I would highly recommend that you jump on board and support Eric in any way you can. And I really don't think you'll regret it. If anything, it will just only enhance your enjoyment of our favourite sport. So please do that if you can. So, guys, what did we do? We did the last episode, I think, 2 weeks ago, and we were back. Bit of a smaller gap than usual. I'm not going to say I'm trying to establish a pattern or anything moving forward, because every time I do that, it just gets kiboshed immediately, and I look like a total idiot. But if you put 2 and 2 together, this was only a 2-week break this time. So I don't know. That might be what I'm going to try to do. But again, we're sort of saying that under our breath because regular content hasn't exactly historically been my strong suit. But I'm making some efforts, so we'll see what happens. But guys, if you want to get in contact with me, you can email the pod at tuscpod@gmail.com. That's tuskpod@gmail.com. If you want to throw a tweet at me, you can do that at delivery_man2. Also got the Insta page, guys, but like I always say, that is hardly must follow content or account. I just post when there's a new episode, but some people have actually reached out to me on DMs on Insta just to have a chat. Shout out to James Drummond. Just randomly reached out a couple of weeks ago, which has been cool, chatting some boxing with James, which I've enjoyed the absolute hell out of. So, if anyone wants to hit me up, go for it, all good. If not, no hard feelings whatsoever. But, guys, we've got some big stuff coming up, not only overseas in the next couple of weeks, but also at home in Australia. Before we even get to March, we've got Jason Maloney over in Japan. The Japan, you can tell I've been talking and it's like 2:30 a.m. in the morning when I'm recording this, so I've lost the ability to speak a little bit, which is ironic for this type of medium. But as Brendan Bradford and I, shout out to Brendan on the last pod, we were wondering if Foxtel and KO were going to pick up the Keyshawn Davis top-ranked card and also the card from Japan that Jason Maloney's fighting Tenshin Nasukawa on, headlined by Junto Nakatani. And the very next day, or I think even later on that afternoon, to when the podcast went live, I got multiple messages with people saying, it's been confirmed both cards have been picked up for free, which is absolutely fantastic. And thank you to those people who sent me those messages to let me know. But so we've got Jason Maloney on Monday the 23rd, or is it the 24th here? But whatever it is, the day after Beterbiev Bivol on Fox Sports in KO for free. Absolutely sensational. Jason's in a huge fight, so I wouldn't be expecting him to be listening on fight week, but as I'm sure all you guys would listening or watching, we throw our massive support and a huge good luck to Jason Maloney. And there's no doubt he's going to represent our country sensationally on the world stage and be a thorough gentleman like he has done in the past and will continue to do in the future. So yeah, best of luck to Jason. But guys, that will do us. So yeah, we mentioned that the Aussie fights start rolling in March. We've got that awesome free card on March the 1st, and then we've got the what would you say, the weirdness of Thurman Jarvis on, I think it's the 12th or whatever it is. So, look, I'll see what I can do about coming back at some stage around then. Might be before, in between, or maybe even after. Either way, those are the plans for the next one. So, guys, until then, enjoy the fights, and I'll chat to you later.
Well, let's travel, may add up the change. Living like there's no tomorrow, then tomorrow came. I was living like there's no tomorrow, then tomorrow came. I got the wake-up call, laughing through the window frame.